Hello, I'm Julie Baranick, and welcome to the Seven Figure Builder Show. Today's guest is someone I genuinely believe every serious business owner needs to hear from. Jon Harper is not just a business leader, he's an author, a speaker, and the comeback story king. He is someone who's done the real internal work that most people avoid, and then built powerful systems to help others do the same inside their own companies. What makes Jon extraordinary is this: he helps leaders free their people from the invisible prisons that quietly cap growth at seven and eight figures, the doubt, the fear, the uncertainty, and the kind that doesn't show up on the P&L, but absolutely dictates performance, decision making, and momentum. Jon's work is grounded in lived experience. He grew up underestimated and spent years running from hard things, and eventually realized that avoiding discomfort was the very thing keeping him from the life and leadership level he knew was possible. Over the last few years, he's completely rewritten that story and now helps leaders and teams face challenges head on with the clarity, creativity, and confidence instead of fear. If you lead people, scale companies, or want to build a business that doesn't break you or the teams in the process, I want you to stop what you're doing and really listen. The insights Jon is about to share can fundamentally change how you approach hard decisions, hard seasons, and the kind of leadership required at the highest levels. Jon, I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Julie. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, of course. So I want to just dive in and can you take us back to a pivotal moment for you that just shifted everything and really launched you into where you are today?
Yeah, I think that the moment that is the most obvious, we had just moved to Texas about 6 months prior, and I had created a habit that I was starting to get a little bit more consistent in my morning routine. And I was out on my back porch, and my son, who at the time, let's see, he was 3, just about to turn 4. And he ran out on the back porch and was so excited to see me. The problem was I had created this habit that I was waking up earlier. I started to wake up around 5 a.m. to get some quiet time and start to be thoughtful and, do some reading of scripture and things of that nature to get my headspace right. As a
Mhm.
father of 2 young children and a business leader, you kind of have to start the day right. And so my son woke up earlier than usual, and he came outside and he ran and hugged me. And I must have made a face at him in a certain way, because he gave me a hug. And I said, "Hey, buddy, I'm just gonna finish. I'm just gonna finish getting ready for the day, okay?" And he walked. He said, "Okay," and he walked back in, and he walked out about 10 seconds later, and he was crying.
Oh,
And I said, "Buddy, what's wrong?" And a father of a 3-year-old, you think something happened. He dropped something or something like that. And he said, "Daddy, I'm so sorry for not helping you start your day." And his face dropped. And what I realized in that moment was I have to structure my life in such a way where if I'm trying to rebuild in a certain way, I can't penalize my family for that. And I needed to create frameworks that could fit within my day-to-day life with a wife and 2 children and friends and neighbors and church and all of the things. And so I started to create frameworks that could fit inside of day-to-day life that wouldn't be a complete overhaul. And that changed everything about how I live my life today. And I'm excited that I get to share that with leaders across the country in my work today too.
that's awesome. That's awesome. And I can't wait to dive in. And it's so true and so powerful that we have to juggle everything, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes you think you can have either or, but the reality is you got to keep it all going. And what is the most key thing that you would say to people and talk us about those frameworks? Like what can you change?
Yeah, I would say a couple of key things is the thing that people have to understand is you don't have to get it right on the first try. You don't have to figure out the framework before you dive in. You have to figure out piece by piece. And some pieces are going to be harder for some people than others, and some people are going to be easier for some people than others. And give yourself grace as you go through that. The other thing I would say is like we all hear this, we all have the same 24 hours in a day, but the reality is we all have the same pockets of those 24 hours. Meaning, for me, I knew I wanted to spend time with my family in the mornings before my kids went to school, and then in the afternoons, between 5 and 7:30. And so sometimes in entrepreneur world or business leader world, we have this thing where it's like we have, these 45 minutes you can spend, being more productive and being more efficient. But the reality is like a lot of us that are making this journey happen, we still want to be dad and mom and husband and wife and friend and community member and have some free time and not feel terrible to watch Netflix for an hour. And that's what the frameworks do is it allows you to still be human,
Mhm.
and allows your people to be human if you're running a business with people that are trying to build this thing with you, and allows the freedom and flexibility if the framework is put in place so that you can still lever up while not having to think that you have to have it all together and maximize every second of every day.
Yeah, totally. And can you tell us, like, what are some tangible things that people can, actions that they can take today?
Yeah, so listen, when you are creating a comeback story, the reality is you have to get really honest about the hard reflections.
Mhm.
And so I tell people often that usually the first three or four things that you have to look in the mirror about are pretty surface. Not because you're trying to avoid them, but because we've all been trained to look at the easy thing to fix first and just fix it and
Mhm.
feel good, right? Like we all get that dopamine hit of like check something off the list. But the first thing you got to do is you got to take the time to be quiet enough to really dig down three, four, five layers and figure out what's at the root cause. The people that I see try to turn around businesses, teams, organizations, and think they're doing well, but ultimately fail at it, are people that just try to check something off a list and feel good at the surface. Or, this happens a lot in corporations that have to report even like quarterly earnings and things like that. You fix it for the quarter, and then a year goes by, and the quarter over quarter or year over year results in that same quarter are
Mhm.
like, man, we went backwards. Like, how did that happen? And the reality is it's because you put a band-aid on that surface thing and didn't get down to the root and did the work. So the first thing I would tell people is you have to get deeper than you think. It's going to take longer than you think. And the cool part about these frameworks is once you realize that there are less people watching you than you think.
Mhm. Nobody
And so
really.
sometimes we, as entrepreneurs and business leaders, we think that the world at large is just waiting to like watch us, and like 5,000 people are going to comment on a social media platform about how terrible this is about my business. The reality is nobody's paying attention to me. Nobody's paying attention to you. They're paying attention to their own life. And
Mhm.
they're hopeful, and I just believe this internally. I believe most people are hopeful that whatever you're doing that serves them does get better, because ultimately, if what you do that serves them gets better, their life gets better.
Mhm.
And so give yourself grace and realize that people aren't watching you as much as you think. Give yourself the freedom to be able to operate in that, and you'd be surprised how quickly you can turn things around.
Totally. And I know you were talking earlier about how this can impact your business, but tell us, like, how does this impact earnings, right? Like, it actually can impact your business growth. We often think it's like, oh, we just need to time block our day, and it's very superficial and very moment by moment. But tell us what you see.
Yeah, so a couple things happen. You have to get creative when you start to create a comeback story within a business, because the business still does need capital to operate, right?
Mhm.
So you can't just cut things to zero and then restart. You still have payroll to make, you still have customers to serve. And so you start to get really, really creative. And so as soon as you get into that creative headspace, what's really, really interesting, and this is what catapults most businesses when they do this the right way, is because you become creative and you go through that uncomfortable creativity pocket, that creativity stays with you when the comeback story is on the other side of hard.
Mhm.
Meaning you now have a new source of creative revenue that you have implemented into your business that you didn't have before. And now you have a business that is built on solid foundations and structures and formulas that was weak at best before you started this story. And so it's really cool because you go from struggling to hang on to having to get creative to hang on while you're fixing the foundation here, to now the creative's here, the foundation's now risen, and now you can rise both to the top at the same time.
That's so cool. Can you give us some examples of what that looks like, real day life?
Yeah, so if let's say you have a company of 10 people and you're doing 1 million in revenue and you're just plateaued and you can't figure out why. What you usually have to do is look at, okay, what are some other ways that we haven't tapped into to create product revenue streams that can serve the revenue needs of this $1 million of top line, right? But have less deliverable service execution. So you start thinking about, we have a client that we work with that they were selling one to one in B2C. And so what we started to help them do is create masterminds and master classes in pockets of the region that they work with in the Northeast. And so instead of selling one to one, they hold four masterminds a year, once a quarter. And they've done it. They did it for that entire year. Their revenue went up 20% from 2 million, just roughly below 2 million to 2.4 million that year. They actually reduced headcount in their sales force because they had a cultural problem. Now, when they rebuilt their sales force, they were doing 2.4 million, right? Without their traditional sales force. Now they rebuilt their sales force back up to 6 people. Now that sales force has the opportunity to go back and rebuild the million like it was before in the traditional way. And that 2.4 million is still sitting in the revenue column. And so it's a really cool story because the creativity was forced. It was like we either figure this out or we got to deal with this bad structure and the bad culture that's within our sales organization, or we got to figure it out on the back end. And that they chose to do that the right way, and it was a really cool thing to watch.
That's awesome. And yeah, so often when our back's against the wall, we all know that. Like you got to move forward. Like you
Yeah,
don't have another option.
yeah.
But what does that process look like with working with you? Like you obviously walk through all these different pieces and how, what does that look like?
Yeah, so the first thing we do is we would just shadow a lot, right? So a lot of it's listening. Like, I can't tell you how many times they're called blind spots for a reason, Julie.
Hmm.
Like nobody knows they're a blind spot until somebody calls out it's a blind spot.
Yeah.
And so usually we come into the organization and we have conversations with everybody that we can. Some organizations, if it's 10, 12 people, we try to have a conversation with everybody
Mhm.
because we want to get the perspective of everybody in the company. If it's a larger organization, we'll have conversations with senior and maybe mid-level leadership. But then if we're so allowed, we try to come in and watch how the operation flows because you can tell a lot from people's body language. You can tell a lot from people's nonverbal behavior. Is going to want to tell you what you're going to want to hear.
Mhm.
But I believe the truth lies in the margin between meetings, the margin between conversations, the body language that you so often ignore when you can't see the forest through the trees. And so what we do is we come in and observe that, and then we create an analysis report
Mhm.
for clients that says, "Hey, listen, based on what you're telling us, you thought this was the problem. We're either going to confirm that or challenge that may not be the only or largest problem, and then create a solution or a strategy plan that can take anywhere from 90 days to an entire year to execute, depending on the size of the company and what they're trying to accomplish." And then we create the execution plan between on-site and virtual consultations, and we partner with the leadership team to execute and make that happen. So it really is an all inclusive partnership. We look at it that way, and we have monthly updates with our senior leadership team to make sure they're getting what they believe their business needs. At the end of the day, this is about their business. If their
Yeah.
business doesn't win, then the community suffers. Nobody gets their service in a quality way. And we believe that small business is the heartbeat of America. And so we have to make sure that we're doing our part to help people see those blind spots so they can serve their customers better.
Yeah. Yeah. And we really need a mirror back. Like that's really where your expertise is seeing the pain points and then reflecting back, okay, here's the problem and here's how you fix it.
That's all right.
But that whole process sounds painful.
It
Like,
is. It
what is the
is.
reality and like what do you get out of it?
Yeah, I mean the process is painful because we've all spent decades building this thing that we call our life.
Mhm.
And it can be painful to look in a mirror that is not filtered in our own bias,
Mhm.
right? And that's what this really does. And we're very honest. I try to be honest with people. Like, look, if I'm nothing, I'm candorous, probably to a fault. Um, but to have a comeback story, the reason people love them so much is because you have to go through that pain,
Yeah.
right? Like people don't go to see box office movie hits when everyone's life is going hunky dory, right? Like nobody goes to that movie. We love comeback stories because of the hard.
Mhm.
I think it was I think the movie was A League of Their Own
Mhm.
where, Tom Hanks said, it's supposed to be hard.
Yeah.
If it wasn't hard, everyone would do it. The
Right.
hard is what makes it great. And that's what makes comeback stories great in America is the hard. And we help people get through it.
Yeah. And there's no crying in baseball.
There's no crying in baseball. That's right.
Yes. No, I love that. And that it's really transformational. Like we started with the family. How does that impact after you've gone through this? Like what does that actually look like at home?
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times that people have told us, they're better parents, they're better spouses because it's less about the business. It's less about the P&L. It's more
Mm.
about the person. And when you can recreate who you are, and there are so many people, Julie, that exist in the world, business and otherwise, that have just lost hope and have just decided that, you know what, this is just who I am.
Mm.
And it usually is an unintentional thought, but it is a thought that people have simply gotten good at dealing with, in my experience. And so the transformational part of what we do is it recreates the identity in the leader so
Mm.
that they are a different person, leader, parent, spouse, and otherwise. And it's a better way to live. And so, again, it's because they did something that I believe we all, you think back as a child, when you did something hard, the best thing I do as a parent is let my kids do something hard. The hardest
Mm.
thing I do as a parent is let my kids do something hard because I want to do
Mm.
it for them because I want to alleviate the pain. But there's nothing like letting your kid do something without your help and them running up and going, "Daddy, look what I did." And that's what we help people do is we help give them get that self-confidence back that they go, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know I could be that compassionate anymore. I didn't know that I could care as much as I do now. I didn't know I could lead like that. I didn't know I could parent like that." And that's what happens on a personal note. And it's just really, really cool to watch.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And it's very brave to take that step forward and really isn't that scary. I mean, they have you, to be with them and all of that, of course, but like to be brave, to be vulnerable, to see that there's a better future than what you don't have today. And
Yeah.
I imagine that they get incredibly re-energized, like, oh, this is why, I started doing this in the first place, and I don't have to feel burnout and I don't have to beat my head against the wall, right?
Yeah. Yeah. One of my mentors early in my leadership journey said leaders are dealers in hope.
Mm,
And I just believe that. And the problem though, in especially entrepreneurial endeavors, is if I don't have hope and I'm the leader of the company, it's really hard to give what I don't have.
yeah.
And so that's what we help people do.
Yeah, now your people feed off of your own energy, right? Like if it looks bleak to you, they're scared,
No
right?
doubt.
They don't know what their future looks like.
Yeah, no doubt.
So with your morning routine, you were mentioning about that. So how did you switch things around? How do you juggle everything at home?
Yeah, so for me, I'm a morning person. I get up at 5 every single morning. That is my habit to intentionally get time to calibrate how I am going to think about the day. I don't believe that there are a lot of people, especially people with young children that have lives and careers and, soccer practice and school and all the things. I have a 6 and 9 year old. And so the odds of me getting up and just feeling like responding properly to the energy and the
Right.
behavior of a 6 and 9 year old is pretty low,
Mhm.
with everything
You
going
need a
on.
head
And so,
start.
yeah, so for me, I wake up at 5 and I just get some time to myself before the sun rises, before most people are awake and the world starts to wake up. And I just get my thoughts together. For me, I'm a person of faith, and so I get in scripture for a little bit. And then I look at my calendar after that and say, okay, who am I going to meet today? Who am I going to see and talk to? And then a lot of times I will go through and say, what could go wrong here? And
Mm,
that exercise has helped me a lot, Julie, because sometimes it'll be raining outside, or sometimes, my calendar will be really tight. And so I will literally say out loud to myself at 6:15 in the morning before my kids are up, okay, John, you've gotten less sleep than normal. You have
mm,
7 back-to-back meetings. You're gonna need to execute patience. If
mm.
your child walks in after school and throws a tantrum about something silly that happened on the playground, like I have to
Yeah.
talk my way through that because intentionality is key. And I think I don't know, I wasn't taught that when I was a child. I just thought people that were happy and were patient and were kind in stressful situations were just like born that way. And what I've learned over time is people that are like that have just created a discipline that has led them into becoming that person. And so that morning routine for the last 4 years has been exactly that is for an hour and a half from 5 to 6:30, I'm by myself before my kids get up and before my wife gets up and helps make lunches and gets them ready and things like that. I help my kids get ready for school. That's a really fun time for me with young children. I try to keep perspective about the fact that even though they're crazy right now, in about 5 years, they're not going to want anything to do with me. So I try to soak up those moments as much as I can. And then after they go to school at 7:30, I get a quick workout in, and then the day's starting. So that first 4 hours of the day is jam packed, but it helps me calibrate what I'm going to think about throughout the day. And it has helped me in so many ways just be more productive and be more intentional with my relational conversations and interactions with people along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you've heard it, but that time goes quickly. So
Big
soak it
time.
up because you'll blink and they'll be out of the house.
Every time I'm around my son and I'm like, buddy, please stop following me. There's a little voice in my head that says
All
he's gonna
right.
stop here in about 4 years and you're
He
gonna
might
want him
listen
to
to you
hang
one
out for a
day.
little bit. That's right. Yeah. So I
Yeah,
try to remind myself.
totally. And what are the biggest gaps that you see with your clients that they don't see the forest for the trees, right?
Yeah, I think it's that most clients forget that they're serving people
Hmm.
and that they're leading people. And when you take a step back and really remember that, you can very often remember, okay, what would I want if I were in the opposite side of this conversation, in the opposite side of this transaction, in the opposite side of this product, right? And the stress of running a business, I tell people all the time there's two sides of running a business. There's a business owner side, which you get really excited about every day. But then if you have employees, then you're an employer, which is
Hmm.
not as exciting because all the problems and the headaches and the liabilities and the costs come from being an employer. And so, but you need the people. But if you look at it through a different lens and say you have an opportunity to serve people with your product or service, and you have an opportunity to give an amazing work environment to a handful of employees, whether that's five or 500
Hmm.
along the way, then you start to ask different questions. And what I find a lot of business owners and leaders come into work every day and they look for problems and fires to put out
Hmm.
versus look at it through the lens of, oh, Jimmy's having a hard day today. I know he didn't want to send me that email at 8:30 to give me that bad news. Or Susie messed up and I know she's afraid of getting in trouble. How can I both help her fix a behavior, but also help her feel supported? And just taking that like extra 2 seconds
Hmm.
to audit that thought process usually leads to audited communication. And when audited communication happens, it comes across much more empathetic and you get a much better result from the people that are running your business day to day. And that makes all the difference.
Yeah. Well, and they get a feeling of heart from you versus just task driver or, results oriented. It's like, no, these are actually people that help me to accomplish my vision and my dreams and goals, and they're along that journey as well.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. People are at the
Yeah.
center of it. Your people are running your business, whether you know it or not. And if they
Mhm.
don't want to, they will only do so much if you quote make them. The ultimate team environment is when you have a team of people, five or 500, that all of them wake up in the morning and want to do great things. And you can't do that if you don't have empathy in your heart. So.
Yeah, totally. And you've accomplished incredible things yourself. You've helped your clients accomplish incredible things. What does success look like to you?
Success looks like significance to me. As I get further in my journey, I think a lot about, and you've heard me hint at this even with my children. I think a lot about what life will look like in 20 years,
Hmm.
30 years. Um, I'm 38, so I'm far from, the end of my journey. My hairline says 54, but I'm really 38.
Hardly.
But I think a lot about that because and only, if I'm lucky at 38, maybe I'll have 40 more trips around the sun here. And that's not a lot. That's not a lot of chances at this. And so to me, it's significance. And when you start to really think about what the reality is in terms of the time we have left, it allows you to interact with people in such a way where you really do empathize with who they are and you try to make a significant contribution to them and their life and their journey. Um, and ultimately, when we work with clients, we're working with people too, and they want to make a difference. And sometimes it's just reminding them of that. Like, hey, you started this business because you wanted to be significant to your clientele and to your employees and to your community. Don't forget that. And a
Mhm.
lot of it's just easy when you're in business for a year or two or a decade. It's easy to just be nose to the grindstone for all that time and not be able to look up and go, man, I wanted to make an impact. And while I might not be where I want to be, like, look at what we've done and
Yeah.
just be grateful for that. And so success to me is significance. And that means different things to different people. But when you start to take that lens, it takes a lot of pressure off and
Mhm.
it allows you to enjoy the journey a little bit more. And people like to be around people that are enjoying the journey a little bit more, let me tell you.
Yeah, they are. Absolutely. And I'm curious, if you had the attention of the whole world for 5 minutes, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that the number one priority I would have is recreating your identity that you have within yourself. So in my experience and my journey in life, I have followed two different paths of identity. I've followed a path that was somebody that was just trying to catch up and keep up, and that was somebody that I, for a while, was proud of. I was like, I'm gonna be the person that proves everybody wrong, and I'm gonna be the person
Mm.
that I'm gonna fight to show everyone who I am. And the reality was, and I alluded to this, people didn't really care who I was. I mean, they cared about me as a person,
Right.
but they were thinking about themselves. And so when I changed my identity as somebody that was trying to keep up and catch up into somebody that was worthy and that had some contribution to give and
Mhm.
that was imperfect but was in process and was somebody that was okay with that and wasn't trying to put on a facade, when my identity changed to that, I started to become more attractive to me. My self-confidence rose. And it's funny, it's when you stop caring about what other people think more of you. It's a
Yeah.
weird thing like that. It's kind of like in high school when you wanted a girlfriend or boyfriend and then you got one and then everybody wanted to date you. It's like that kind of
Right.
thing, right? It's like so it's an anomalistic thing that happens in life, and the same thing happens in business and in leadership. And it's when you change your identity that you have inside of yourself, your behavior will change, your results will change, and the most important thing in all of that is that identity shift because you're at peace.
Mhm. Yeah. And it makes it that much more enjoyable to go through this thing we call life.
That's right.
So for people that are listening to like, okay, I got to get a hold of John, where can they find you online?
Yeah, so I we are big on LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn is John Harper. JohnHarper.co is our website. You can go there. So those are the two most checked places for me. We do a lot of business with clients on LinkedIn and share their success stories there. But yeah, those two places are the easiest to find us.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, we'll have that in the show notes so people can come check it out
Awesome.
and come work with you because this is so needed. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks,
Cool.
Julie. Thanks for having me on. This was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And if you found value in this episode, please do share it. That's how people find us. And you can find me at sevenfigurebuilder.com. And I will see you on the next episode.